Tucker Carlson had Marjorie Taylor Greene on his program last night. I'm not sure. Was this the entirety of the hit? Do we know if she was on for longer? Because it's hilarious to me if he only gave her this 3-minute slot. I'd imagine that there's some contempt for Marjorie Taylor Greene and her complete wackadoodle nature, even within the Tucker Carlson white supremacist kind of wing of the Republican Party and media apparatuses. But she's as close to the Republican base as any elected member of Congress. And that's why they feel compelled to have her on. So we only had her on for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing, right? Like, they're checking a box here. They don't like Marjorie Taylor Greene because they have immense contempt for the base that they're constantly trying to appeal to. And she's a lot closer to the people that Tucker's speaking to than Tucker is in his fancy Manhattan studio where he's speaking to her here. He could have also spoken to her from his studio in Maine at his compound or his one in Florida. But he's here in New York, where she just visited. And she has a lot to say about New York City to Tucker Carlson, who, from my understanding, is seated in New York City as she says this to him.
So it looked pretty crazy in New York yesterday. And of course, looking crazy was the whole point of this, to terrify swing voters into never voting for Donald Trump. What was it like? Well, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia was there for the arraignment. And before she arrived, the mayor of the city, already failed just a year into office, Eric Adams, described her as a criminal and implied he would punish her if she misbehaved. Meanwhile, actual lunatics showed up and prevented her from speaking. Watch.
Sir, can I ask what those are for?
So we hear that Marjorie Taylor Greene is coming to the city right here. So we brought some whistles to hand out to people to drown her out with some noise.
That's a sitting member, an elected member of the Congress. Everyone can see where this is going. Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Can you pause it?
Tonight.
So when he said lunatic, I'd seen this clip already. I thought that we were getting like, okay, you know, maybe some crazy person showed up and was harassing her in her face. It was just some protester calmly explaining why he's showing his discontent for, yes, she's not a convicted criminal, but in my estimation, anyone who tries to overturn the democratic results of an election is a criminal. She's also a total government leech. I mean, what happened to all that PPP loan money, Marjorie Taylor Greene? We could look into that, but yeah, go on.
Also, just want to be clear. I think it's amazing that they found the one guy who was also handing out whistles to try and drown her out, and did not clip the interview exchange between NBC News' Ben Collins. If you guys would like to go to his Twitter account and find that video, where he spoke to a guy who was also handing out whistles and also a supporter of Marjorie Taylor Greene's, saying he just wanted to make as much noise as humanly possible. So it wasn't just one lib side drowning her out. Her own supporters were doing the whistling.
Yeah, I mean, but, like,
not that it matters.
Not that it matters at all. Like, but they had this narrative prepped, to your point. There's no amount of facts on the ground that was going to change that Marjorie Taylor Greene was a complete victim. They're professional victims over there in the Republican Party when she decided to do a political stunt in New York City for the short period of time that she was here. And I also just love the chyron there. Marjorie Taylor Greene experiences NYC's famous hospitality. That's seemingly tongue-in-cheek and sarcastic, but like, actually, yeah, the stereotype is that New Yorkers are kind of rude. So you're not breaking anything, although I would in some ways disagree with that, but we're at least impatient. There's that.
To recount what she saw in New York yesterday. Congressman, thanks so much for coming on. What was that like?
Well, it was absolute chaos, and that's what the mayor of New York City wanted to happen to me. You see, he threatened me and basically put out a dog whistle for violence against me. And then there was a funded text alert that went out naming me by name and telling people to do exactly what that man was doing, hand out whistles and try to create a chaotic scene.
You know, like the Trump kids just did to the judge that's just trying to do his job, presiding over the Trump case, posting the judge's daughter's photo and her work information.
Naming me by name, a sitting member of Congress, naming me by my name.
Right. Naming that there were going to be
John Proctor over here.
demonstrations outside of the courthouse, probably sending out like, hey, if you want to be a counter protester, here's how you can be involved.
Tucker,
Marjorie Taylor Greene will be there.
Tucker, they posted my assassination coordinates.
All right.
What that man was doing, hand out whistles and try to create a chaotic scene of violence and assault. And that's against the law, by the way, Tucker. You see, they didn't want me to be able to protest and use my First Amendment rights. And they wanted violence. I think they wanted that to happen because they want to repeat January 6th all over again. They want all of us Trump supporters, MAGA, basically Republicans and just good Americans to look like criminals. And that's what they do in communist countries, and that's actually what we're seeing today.
Well, the first thing to do, of course, is take away your freedom to speak. And if you can't say what you really think, then you're not a free person, you're a slave. And once you are, then there's really nothing they can't do to you. Do you think people understand the implications of not allowing someone to speak?
I don't think they do. I don't think people realize what dangerous times we're living in.
Right now.
You see, the Democrat Party,
now.
they're the fascists. They want to cancel our voices.
Nice.
They want to censor us, and they want to completely force us into complying. You see, the reason why they're prosecuting, or should we say persecuting, Donald Trump is for the crime of actually winning the 2016 presidential election. That's what they're in hysterics over, and they've never gotten over it. But what they really want to do is once they remove their top political opponent, which is President Trump, they're going to come after all of us. This has happened repeatedly throughout history, and people need to wake up to the reality of the danger we're living in.
Really quick, since you were just there, but Mayor Adams described New York as, quote, his home. How did his home look? Pretty neat and tidy?
No, his home is disgusting. I compared it to what I called Gotham City. The streets are filthy. They're covered with people basically dying on drugs. They can't even stand up. They're falling over. There's so much crime in the city. I can't comprehend how people live there. It was repulsive. It smells bad. And I think it's a terrible place.
Yeah, with some nice people. I will say that. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene.
You got a little smarted there. You got a little smarted.
Thank you, Tucker.
Yeah, thank you, Tucker. I mean, look, it's just
My daddy's from there. Marjorie.
Marjorie. And I abide here 1/3 of the year. I mean, I go to Florida for 51% for tax purposes, but
And my nuclear bunker in Maine.
that too. But sometimes I get in my limousine and I drive to the Fox News studio because naturally I have an apartment in the city. I mean, what am I going to do? Commute in and out? I mean, I need that.
I'm no strap hanger.
Really, right. Marjorie Taylor Greene, I mean, it must have been like a war zone. She must have seen a lot of crap on her Escalade ride from her Midtown New York City 5-star hotel to the courthouse with her political, with her protections from her Secret Service type staff. And then after doing a 30-minute stunt with Jack Posobiec, her drive to the airport.
I also just appreciate that her...
Must have been harrowing.
I also appreciate that her review of the city and that she was in for about 3 hours in one of the most like securitized, protected areas on an off day, because it's literally the municipal building and court area of Lower Manhattan. As which I've been there. I've been there obviously for like, just in that area. She's lying because
she's lying
because obviously because it is by nature, just because of how many government buildings there are. They don't even allow sort of any sort of like blight to stay around for too long. Blight, I'm saying in terms of how they would probably characterize it. But I also just appreciate that her review of New York City was basically the first verse from The Message by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. She's like, broken glass everywhere. People pissing on the stairs. You know, they just don't care.
Yeah, it really is like that. But do you just notice how she has this ready to go, and the confidence that she has in her lies is astounding to me. There's never really a second guessing moment for her. I've lived within 20 miles of New York City my entire life, except for, when I was in college. And now I've lived in different areas of Manhattan. I've lived in different areas of Brooklyn. I've moved around the city a good amount. I can confidently say I've never seen multiple people dying on the streets, probably ever, but especially within the span of one day, when the extent of her New York City experience was, again, her Escalade ride from her hotel to the protest to the airport. Now, I don't know that for sure, but I'd wager it was something quite similar to that. So she's just lying. And then there's a ton of people that want to believe it and be like, yes, hellhole. And you look at crime rates throughout the country. They're much higher in more mid-sized cities, smaller cities in the center of the country, in red states as well. Crime is higher. So it's just counterfactual. But like, she got what she wanted. She knew from the moment that she came to New York, this is what the end result of her analysis was going to be. And she had a pre-primed smaller slot on Tucker Carlson to make that case to the geriatric audience.
I also just appreciate that she's still like, this is all about the 2016 election, when the only people that continually talk about how the 2016 election is still continually being relitigated are the people who keep mentioning that the 2016 election keeps being relitigated. Like, the shelf life for all of these controversies for white right-wingers like her and Tucker and people on Fox News is literally endless, which is also why I think it's like a resistance lib take of mine that I was seeing a little bit on Twitter with this clip. But it was like, if AOC was like, I went to Rome, Georgia, in Georgia's 14th congressional district, and it is an absolute hellhole.
It's disgusting.
It is disgusting. A bunch of rednecks live there. Like, it is a freaking backwater.
Right.
I mean, there'd be multiple lawsuits filed. I think Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson would attempt to arrest her in person. I think the entire right-wing media ecosystem would mobilize in a militarized fashion to castigate AOC for pillorying the heartlandland.
They would censure her in 36 hours.
For sure.
Guarantee it. And what's also interesting is when she didn't say 2020, that he won the 2020 election. Interesting that she didn't say that.
She brought up the W.
It's interesting that she did not say that. My guess is, in the midst of this Dominion lawsuit, Tucker's producer said, absolutely not.
All right, 3.5 minutes, get her off.
Yeah. And
really quickly, how was New York?
I'll never forget this one moment, and we'll get to our guest in a sec, but in the 2016 debate, where Ted Cruz was talking about how disgusting New York City is and how crime-ridden it is, and Trump looked down at his podium and just said, I'm really offended by that. William F. Buckley is from New York City, and I was there on 9/11, and I saw all of these people banding together and coming together to support one another. And Ted Cruz looked like he crapped his pants when that happened.
He was like, Ted, you're gutless.
But the point is just that, I don't even know. The New York City as a hellhole has been a narrative in Republican politics for decades at this point. It doesn't matter what the results are or the reality is on the ground. They'll just keep saying it. And she's lying, but it doesn't really matter because it feels true to the people watching that.